This hacker tricked the FBI and made it onto the most wanted list. Imagine being on the run for nearly 3 years from the FBI. You're changing your appearance a lot, you've got a lot of fake IDs, you're cloning cell phones, and all this time, the FBI is trying to hunt you down. They've got no idea where you are, but in the meantime, you're living right under their nose the whole time. Just living a normal life in your apartment in North Carolina. This is the story of Kevin Mitnick, a young man who found himself digging a deeper hole because of his intellectual curiosity and challenging himself to dive deeper into systems that he wasn't meant to be in. And it all started when he was just a teen with a genuine curiosity to challenge himself by breaking into some of the world's biggest corporate systems at the time. But he didn't do it with a hack. He just tricked people into giving up serious intel that he could leverage via social engineering tactics. How? Let's dive in. At the age of 12, Kevin figured out that buses in his hometown of Los Angeles were using special hole punchers at the time to stub these bus tickets. One day, he convinced the driver that he was working on a special school project, and he was like, "Hey, where did you get that special hole puncher?" And the driver gave him the exact address. So he went down to the address where he could get this hole puncher, and he said, "Hey, my dad works for the bus transit system, and he needs one of these hole punchers." And that's how he got his hands on it. Then he went to the bus station depot and he went dumpster diving, and lo and behold, he found a bunch of unpunched clean tickets, and now he was riding the bus for free all around Los Angeles. A few years later, at the age of 16, a friend of his introduced him to phone phreaking. Phone phreaking really deserves an episode all on its own, but basically it's a way to break into phone systems and mess around with them. Kevin got so good at this that he had the house phone of a friend of his relabeled as a payphone, so that anytime he picked up his home phone to dial a number, the system would ask him to put in a dime. He was also making long distance calls for free. But this was just the beginning. He unfortunately befriended a group of hackers who would challenge him to hack into Digital Equipment Corporation, DEC, which he did, and things would have been smooth sailing. But unfortunately, one of his hacker quote-unquote friends ratted him out once he obtained the source code. But thanks to his young age, he was able to get away with this hack unscathed. 2 years later, he would go on to hack Pacific Bell, and he was ratted out by one of the girlfriends connected to his hacker friends. After serving a brief stint in juvie, he gained access to ARPANET, which is a precursor to the internet, where he tried to hack into a Pentagon computer. He served 6 months in prison for this one. He then hacked into DC once again. And again, he was caught because a friend of his ratted him out. Wow, bro, you should have made better friends. Imagine the kind of friends you have who are constantly trying to rat you out. I guess he learned his lesson because this one time, a hacker FBI informant actually befriended him, and the hacker only gave up his pager number. So Kevin set up caller ID at a friend's house and contacted him at 3 a.m. thinking this hacker, he's gotta call him from his house phone, right? And that's how he got his home number. And with that number, he was able to get a list of calls made to and from that number, and he figured out that the FBI was onto him. When he noticed that his alarm system on his computer went off due to one of the FBI numbers pinging from near his office, that's when he knew they were onto him. So he moved all his equipment to a friend's house and left a box of donuts in his fridge labeled FBI donuts inside. The FBI found nothing, and they were also not amused. Eventually, Kevin Mitnick would go on the run. This is how it went down. One day, the FBI got wind that Pacific Bell had been hacked again, this time by someone at Teltech, a detective agency. And guess who turned out to be their most recent hire? But when they showed up at his apartment, this time he was nowhere to be found. He had contacted the DMV, impersonating a police officer, and he managed to create a fake identity. And from here, he would go on to create multiple identities that would help throw off the police's scent and anyone else who came to suspect him. He also hacked into the FBI's phone records and locations so that he could be sure to stay one step ahead of them at all times. During this time, the New York Times actually published an article calling him public enemy number 1 in cyberspace. He was basically the catch me if you can version of cyberspace. He was on the run for nearly 3 years, and it was possible for him to evade capture this long, not just because of his social engineering tactics, but because he actually managed to create a new life for himself under a fake identity, and he got himself a regular job, and he was just living a normal life. But one day, maybe it was his ego that caught up to him, or maybe it was the sense of needing a personal challenge, maybe it was that itch he had. But after having broken into so many high-profile corporate systems, including Motorola's, Nokia's, and Sun Microsystems, he actually went after a cybersecurity expert, Tsutomu Shimomura, which would prove to be his downfall. An incensed Shimomura decided to team up with the FBI, and he managed to create a digital trail of Kevin's actions and whereabouts, which eventually led to a successful capture. Shimomura even wrote a book about it called Takedown, original title, and they even made a movie about it called Takedown. The film depicts Kevin hacking into Shimomura's personal computers and stealing and deleting everything.
Right now, I could be on that computer this minute, and I could take money from any bank, anywhere, in the country, and I could put it into any account that I want to, and I don't!
See this? Some of the code is encrypted.
Hey, I got a new story for you.
The story of the nation's top computer security expert. Know what happens to him?
He gets hacked.
Kevin did admit that he did hack into Shimomura's computers, but he alleges that he actually never caused any damage to anyone or delete any files or anything like that. Instead, he just copied the source code of some software because he was genuinely curious. In Kevin's book, The Art of Deception, Kevin actually talks about the book and movie and calls them extremely inaccurate. The movie actually shows Kevin and Shimomura meeting twice, and one of these meetings actually leads to Kevin fleeing to Seattle, and Kevin has always claimed that this meeting never took place. We don't know who's full of shit here, but I do like to think Kevin's version is more accurate because he would have no reason to lie about this. Also, if you get a movie deal, you're probably going to exaggerate some stuff for dramatic effect, right? When Kevin was finally caught, he still pretended he had no idea why the FBI was at his house and insisted for hours that he didn't know who Kevin Mitnick was. It was only when the FBI searched one of his jackets that they found a ticket stub under his real name, and that's when he knew the jig was up. In court, the prosecuting attorney even told the judge that Kevin shouldn't be allowed access to any telecommunications devices because he could launch nuclear weapons by whistling into a payphone. He even managed to hack a regular phone while he was in solitary for 8 months. He did this by dialing numbers while pretending to scratch his back, all while a security guard assigned to watch him was staring at him in plain sight. After serving roughly 5 years in prison, he finally came out a reformed man, and he decided, you know what, I'm gonna go white hack. And he was surprised that he was able to land gigs from companies that would pay him to actually break into their systems. So he leveraged his newfound fame to join a security firm, and he started training government agencies and corporations on social engineering tactics and offered other services like penetration testing. He's also published several books, and I strongly recommend that you read them. They're excellent, like Ghost in the Wire and The Art of Deception, which I mentioned earlier. Kevin died just last year on July 16, 2023. Some folks in the cybersecurity community argue that Kevin wasn't all that, but we have to remember that this was the heydays when governments were really worried about security. All this technology was really new and just coming out, and they didn't know much about any of it. And like governments do, they tend to freak out. So they chose to make an example out of him. Still, kudos to Kevin for using his position to not only make a name for himself, but to spread awareness about social engineering and its consequences. You really can't fault him for that. All right, that pretty much covers our episode for today. If you enjoyed this episode, give me a like and subscribe to the channel. And let me know in the comments below who you think I should cover next. I'm thinking Ross Ulbricht and Silk Road, Do Kwon and Luna, or maybe even D-Gods. I'll catch you in the next one. I'm your host, Valery Yoshi. You've been watching DGen Reports. Ciao.